All right, cool. Well, everyone, welcome to the webinar. Thanks for showing up, and to all those who are going to watch it later. My name is Bryan Seely. I'm a cybersecurity expert. I'm a former Marine. I am particularly well known for wiretapping the Secret Service and the FBI a few years ago. I was also on John McAfee's board before he died, under questionable circumstances. Let's just call it that. But here today, we're here on doing a free webinar for Strategic Alliance Consulting. They brought me in to host this webinar and talk about ransomware, particularly what's kind of going on in that space, how to defend yourself, that kind of stuff. A lot of good information, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions at the end, and then, except for the people watching later, you'll just have to stay tuned. There'll be at least 2 more webinars in our series over the coming weeks. So, without further ado, oh yeah, that's me again. So that was, if you caught a little bit of the conversation that we were having right before this webinar started, I was trying to highlight a problem with Google Maps. So I put some funny things on Google Maps to show that there was an issue, and that didn't really get the point across in the way that I had hoped. They didn't really take jokes seriously. So I made Edward Snowden's super secret hiding place on the White House lawn, and then changed the Library of Congress to the Zoolander School of Kids Who Can't Read Good. That was a lot of fun. We got on a phone call with Google. They said it wasn't possible, and then we showed them, and then they hung up. And then I made this one for a TED Talk called Wiretapping the Secret Service Can Be Easy and Fun. There was a snowboarding shop. If you look real close, the little blue thing in the center of the White House, that's Edward's Snow Den, the snowboarding shop, which is still my favorite joke. It's always making me laugh. The idea behind this was, it was a year after I had wiretapped the Secret Service and the FBI using Google Maps. I had told the Secret Service, told the FBI. They didn't put me in jail forever. I'm still grateful to them for that. But that's a story I've told plenty of times. So you're free to watch them on YouTube. Look it up. I mean, you can't make it up. Ransomware is a huge problem. As of, this was from a statistics website, but it's looking like everybody has seen some sort of exposure to ransomware. If you don't know what it is exactly, there's a variety of different types. It's one subset of malware. Malware being software you don't want, just bad. Viruses, rootkits, all that stuff is malware. Anything that is like a fraud or a con or a trick, something that I'll install this coupon printer and they're stealing all your information. That's malware. Ransomware is a particularly nasty one because it gets into your files, it encrypts them with something, some really complex math. And there's a way to decrypt it. You just have to pay a ransom. And the ransoms are going up every year. The amount of people getting hit every year is going up. I think there was a it was Gartner, did a survey within the last few months. And 70% of the people who responded said that they got hit, their companies were hit with ransom. and they did 5,000 or 10,000 different people. So it's not as publicized, even though companies do go public about it. There's plenty of companies who aren't telling people that they got hit with ransomware, or they just stopped being companies. So then that was it. I've walked into stores. I walked into a trophy shop to get something for a softball tournament, and they had to shut their doors. Got hit with ransomware, and that was it. So it's not like there's any sort of methodology or method to the madness in terms of who's really being targeted. It's just who's falling victim. Everyone's being targeted, plain and simple. Government being the worst. Probably, if I had to guess, reasoning why is fragmented budgets, public sector versus private. Private has more incentive and more control over its own sovereignty. So the CEO says we're going to spend money here, we spend money here, but the public entities have limited funding, limited people, and then it gets voted on, so things are a lot slower to move. So government organizations fall victim and everyone gets affected. So something definitely needs to be done about that. So with common attack vectors, we're talking social engineering, which is people hacking, which is just another way of saying a con man, someone who's committing fraud, some lying. I'm just lying. If you get an email that says, "Hi, I'm a prince from Nigeria," lying. He's not a prince from Nigeria. It could be a romance scam. That happens a lot. It's one of the top 3. Anything that gets you to do something that you wouldn't normally do if you knew what the truth was. Guy holding a gas can who's really not out of gas, just using it as a prop or a pretext. That is more targeted. There's more human involvement, but phishing emails fall into that category where everyone gets bad email. We're sending out millions and millions a second. And as a scammer organization or people doing this, they're playing a numbers game. They're just sending out as many emails as they possibly can, hoping, knowing that a certain percentage is going to click on the link and do something stupid, enter in their credentials or download some file that looks safe, PDF or Word doc or something. Spear phishing. This is a little different. This is where you have a target in mind and you are researching this target. Now, this could increase to whaling, which is like C-level executives, celebrities, and you have much more of the person doing this has a better skill set. They're probably more capable, and there's a reason they're going after you. So Sarah Palin, when she was running for vice president, her email was hacked. Somebody guessed her 3 security questions, and that was it. And that's all they needed to break into her email. That would be a spear phishing or whaling attack. If you're going for a whale, it's usually because they own or control. They're very powerful. They have a lot of money, maybe crypto, but that's where the targeted efforts happen. Phishing is the lowest. It's just a big net, or just is as much effort as you can put into it with the least amount of push. So you're automating sending out emails. We're not just typing these out manually one at a time, or even copying and pasting. It's really low effort, low return, but it works. Malvertising is another thing. If you don't have a pop-up blocker, I feel bad for you. If you're on a desktop or something, usually Chrome or now Edge and Firefox have built-in pop-up blockers. But if you ever go on your phone, and sometimes you go to a website, it's practically unreadable. there's pop-ups coming in. You're scrolling there. You don't know where the X is. They hide it. It is just a giant nightmare. And people have found ways of purchasing advertising space, putting in malware into that until it gets caught. So they'll catch a certain amount of people before their account gets shut down. And that's a way to propagate malware, especially to phones. Apple is less susceptible to this problem than Android, but not immune. Exploited and leaked account creds. This comes to the point of when we tell you you need a password manager or use strong passwords, it doesn't mean you have to have the worst, hardest to remember password with every other number and symbol, because that's not how computers break passwords anyways. It has to be unique across every site that you use. So if you use Gmail and Dropbox and Facebook and fitness app and My Pets or whatever, all the different things you use and your kids use, if you're using the same password across all of them, that's the key. That is a key to every door. And if someone has a copy of that key, now they can get into every single thing you own. If you have a different password, they can't just automatically go in and get access to all your stuff. But now you got to carry around all those keys. That's where a password manager comes in. There are websites that have essentially databases. I was actually showing Avi and Steven before. There's a number of websites that show breached data. So MyFitnessPal, Canva, there's all these different really big security breaches. MySpace, Dropbox had one a while back. You'll get usernames and passwords that are searchable. So the good guys can find out, hey, we got exposed. Or the bad guys now also have it. So good and bad, the intent matters. You can now search by passwords and see what's really good and what's really bad. We looked up, what was it, password 123? 415,000 people used that as their password or used that password. At a percent, or not a percent, exclamation point, it was still a 10,000. Now change it to uppercase P and then the O to a 0 with the double exclamation point. It was still 4,000 people. So we're not as clever as we think we are. I've found a lot of people try to out clever them, the security policy at their company, and they'll just change it to their password to like November 23 or November 22 for the year. And then it changed the month every single time. We already know you're going to do that. So there's no point in doing that because it's predictable. Have a password manager. Use that to generate your passwords. Stop trying to be clever. Unless you're going to do something like, my dog is a terrible driver. That's way longer than the minimum requirement, which would be like 15 or 16 characters. I personally recommend 20 or more. You could use the lyrics for the first, like your favorite song, like the first line of lyrics. No spaces or underscores or however you want to do it. You'd remember it. You'll never forget it, but it's hard to guess and break for a computer. Mathematically, it's just going to take forever. And the other common attack vector is unpatched vulnerabilities. Systems. So whenever you get that notification saying Adobe Reader wants to update, Notepad wants to update, your system needs to shut down. Do you want to delay your restart? Do it right now. Go get a coffee, wait for the reboot, run the updates. I promise you, over the lifetime of all the updates, like a year or two that you skipped, any one of those events isn't more important than those updates. Even if you're on a deadline, it doesn't take that much. Or set a calendar reminder, so right before you go to bed, you turn it off, reboot your machine. Make sure you do the updates, because if you don't, that's the lowest hanging fruit that hackers look for. It's what we scan for when we get into a network. It's what we scan for when we're outside of a network, called pen testing. So if we're doing an external facing scan, we're seeing essentially like the front of a house, right? And we can see whether that window is locked, or if that window has a known vulnerability or a known weak spot. Like, oh yeah, if you tap right here, the whole pane just falls out because the designer didn't anticipate someone doing that. Or you can freeze the deadbolt, hit it with a hammer, pops it open. That's a vulnerability. Or a weak lockpick, anything like that. We can scan the front of every house, which would be like an IP address on the internet. If you're on the internet, we can see you, period. We can scan you, and you can't do anything to stop it except unplug. That's why unpatched vulnerabilities are so important to fix, not leave them. Imagine, it's like you look under your desk and there's a giant trash can full of mold, and you're like, I don't know how to deal with that. I don't really want to deal with that right now. Just wait for it to go away. It isn't. Things don't just go away. That's not how physics works. One recent hacking group that had some fairly big notoriety in hacking: Microsoft, Samsung, NVIDIA, Okta, HubSpot, Health Ministry of Brazil. So a lot, big companies. Primarily were arrested. They found out they were teenagers. Most of them were teenagers between the ages of 16 and 19. And they are advertising on Telegram. They'll pay employees a certain amount of like a bounty. But this tactic that they're using is what I like to call the Family Guy Stewie scene, where they'll get exploited credentials or compromised credentials from a website. They'll figure out a way to get your credentials. But you've got two-factor authentication, where your phone gets a notification that says approve or deny. Oh, okay. Well, it's usually for a VPN, usually for some access to corporate infrastructure. If they click submit over and 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 over, you'll get 100 notifications to approve or deny. Now, if it's 3 a.m, it's going to get really annoying. And multiple people said, fine, okay, fine, just make it go away, approve it. I probably forgot that my computer's connected to VPN. Now it's trying to connect. I just need to approve this. And you just gave the hackers access. I call that the Family Guy scene, because there's a scene in Family Guy where Stewie's like, Mom, 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 Mommy, Mom. And if anyone has kids, you know that they'll bug you until you're just like losing your mind. Okay, what is it? I'll give you anything you want. Just stop. And that's what they did. And these teenagers are furthering the old adage that kids will teach you things. I didn't think they'd teach us this, but here we are. So this is a pretty good way of describing. I know it looks like a rocket ship now, but it's a hacker with a laptop and takes the compromised credentials using automation or a botnet. You can then go and try 1 million different combinations to break into this website. But this is the fun stuff. This is what they posted publicly on Telegram. were recruiting insiders at the following companies: Microsoft, Apple, EA, IBM, or call centers, or server hosting, gaming companies, telecommunications. You will be paid. And they were at some point, I think, offering $40,000 to $50,000 a week for an insider to just place a small piece of software in the company and break them in. So like hold the door open essentially. And that's all they had to do. The software on the left is a bot. I mean, it's got customer official chat, except for it's there's a typo, so they don't have a good QC guy, but they've got the copyright symbol on there too. It's really funny. They've got legitimate software now, or illegitimate software designed only for bad guys, being made by software companies. They're getting more sophisticated. So the part of oh, there we go. Part of what you're going to want to watch for is someone sends you a weird message. Like, have you ever gotten a Facebook Messenger message where it's the picture's right, but it says, "Hi, how are you doing today?" None of my friends talk to me like that, ever. I've never had any of my friends go, "Hello, Brian, how are you today? Are you well?" No one's that formal. Be a little bit skeptical when you see something like that. If your emotions are heightened, there's a urgency to this message. Your iCloud account was hacked. Click here for more information. Then wait. The request is urgent, or it's too good to be true. You won the lottery. What my mentor and really close friend, his parents wired 40 grand to somebody in the UK because they won the lottery there, and they needed money to get the courier over to the US. $40,000 they couldn't get back. Or someone's offering you help you didn't ask for. Like, I got a call from a buddy of mine. Where was I? Oh, I was in Washington, D.C. And he calls me and he goes, "Yeah, I've got this other guy on the line. He said he's from Microsoft and I've got viruses on my network." Well, that's a red flag, because Microsoft doesn't call and reach out to you to tell you anything about your home network. That would be illegal. That would be breaking the law for them to actually know what's going on inside your network. But it's a call center and trying to scam you into giving them control of your computer to then fix it for you. Well, the dead giveaway was the guy said, "I'm from Redmond, Washington, D.C." Anyone see the problem? Washington, D.C. is a whole separate place from Washington State, where there is a city named Redmond. So they're on the opposite sides of the country. And unless you're not from here, you wouldn't know that by default. Like, I wouldn't know where the capital city of some country I've never been to or never looked at on a map is versus another city. I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about the culture. He didn't know that on the phone because he's not from here. He's not from Microsoft. So we hung up the phone, but my buddy was still like, "Really? Are you sure? He could have just been making a mistake." I'm like, "This is what I do for a job. Are you really not going to listen? Really?" Or this is very common in romance scams. Senders can't prove their own identity. They won't do a video or a phone call, that kind of thing. Watch out for that stuff. How can you tell you're under attack? Usually it's related to money. CEO or someone will get an email saying, "We need to change billing information here." One common thing is the internet slows down really bad. Files are inaccessible. Users start complaining. Tickets to the help desk go way up. Someone gets a screenshot or they reboot their machine and all of a sudden you're getting a ransom demand. They can't find anything. That's a pretty good indicator you're under attack. Office forwarding rules for Office 365. That's a thing you should monitor for. Unexpected vendors and invoices and money going out. Accounting's having issues. Those are all pretty good indicators. What you need to do: triage, assess, scope, and scale, figure out which servers have been compromised, which ones haven't. You don't want to turn something off and assume it's safe, only to turn it back on and have it spread malware again. Don't try to handle it yourself. Hire an expert. Even the biggest companies call a third party, because if you're too close to the problem, like being in a relationship and needing a therapist, like if you're too close to that problem, you're not going to see everything. You're going to miss stuff. You need a fresh pair of eyes, unbiased third party, come in and fix problems. You need to verify your most important systems or the most protected data is actually still safe. You need to verify the backup integrity of your backups. Hopefully you have immutable backups, which means write, and then it can never be overwritten. So it's write once, read many. It's called worm storage. Don't try to handle it yourself. Don't try to hide it from people. It always comes out. And Uber got caught doing that at least once. And then don't hope it just goes away. It's not going away. And this will be available for people to go through, and it does have, I do have a lot of technical solutions in here. So for people who aren't as technical, apologies, but this is all very current sort of best practices. Require MFA for all users, all locations, no exceptions, inside or outside. Everyone has to use MFA. If you are considering or changing solutions, I would strongly encourage YubiKeys or FIDO tokens, USB keys. We don't, as the hacking community and ethical hackers, even all the way, I just had this conversation with Kevin Mitnick, we don't know how to break that yet. And that's the only authentication mechanism we haven't figured out how to break. So it's the most secure. His company uses the YubiKeys. That's good enough for me. If a bomb squad technician starts running, run. That's essentially the logic behind that. Don't use text messaging for authentication if you have other options. Back up your admin accounts, global admin for Office 365, make admin accounts to then put on a piece of paper and then put them in a fire safe. Don't store work credentials in your browser. Use a password manager. Use application whitelisting. Sometimes it comes with antivirus. Sometimes it's your corporate provides it, but use that. It basically means you have to approve applications before they automatically just get the rights to just run. Monitoring solutions, that's for systems architects and other people, but if you don't have good visibility, you don't know what's going on your network. Same thing with the SIEM. We talked about immutable backups, meaning you need to have something that can be restored quickly, but you also need to have like an archival copy somewhere that can't get affected by a hacker trying to delete it, because they'll go in and delete your backups before they encrypt all your stuff. They're jerks. MFA service, instead of just allow, approve or deny, use number matching if you possibly can. Microsoft uses this now. So when you get, instead of approve, it says pick the number that you see on the screen. That way, you know that there's an attempt for login going on and you have to pick the right one. You can't just hit approve because you're annoyed. That one is a duplicate. Dual credentials, something I really encourage people. Even myself right now, I'm using a regular user that doesn't have admin function on my own machine. When I need to install something, I will log in as admin, install it, log back out. That way, if I accidentally click on a link and it tries to install programs, I don't have permissions. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. That's the way you keep yourself safe, is putting your own boundaries in place. Disable local admin use the what's called LAPS, local admin password solution for Windows. It changes the default Windows local admin password off domain to something else. Or for the most sophisticated people who like a bit of the trappy sort of scenario, you can make your monitoring or your SIEM monitor one account that you use specifically to see if someone breaks into that machine and they use something like Mimikatz, or whatever they do to get the password for the local admin. If they log in as that, you get an alert. You know someone, that's your canary in the coal mine. It's a tripwire, something that you can think about. Or you can use a dedicated admin workstation or VM for all of your, this VM is for my dev environment, this VM is for production, this VM is for this. They're encrypted. They're not by default running. When you log into them, you can then access everything that you need to run the VPNs, but they're not just sitting out in the open and on all the time. Minimum passwords, 15 characters or more. Clean your room, which means document your stuff, organize things that'll make it easier to work, keep your desk clean, keep your desktop clean, make sure you're filling in the stuff. Oh, I'll do that later, or I'll go write that, write up later, or I'll make that mapping later, or I'll change my passwords later. Everything becomes later and you never ever get to it. Secure DNS services, OpenDNS, something like that, helps get rid of a lot of bad links, phishing emails, things like that. But someone needs to be in charge of patching or updates. If you're the head of your household, that means you, or your teenager, for your ISP's router, your Wi-Fi, all your phones, tablets, all that stuff, they need to be updated. You need to learn how to use the stuff that you own. You almost need a license for one of these to be able to properly demonstrate you can use one responsibly, like a car. But we have licensing for cars because you could kill people with them. You could completely destroy someone's life with this by clicking on the wrong thing in the wrong place. So you have to learn the stuff you have about the stuff you have. If you are a big company, audit your C-level personnel. Google them, find out what's exposed on the internet, because that can be used against them in a whaling attack. And if you need help, find a forum or a community or an expert, hire a company. Ask. If you're going to post publicly about something, don't post from your regular email account or on Reddit. Create a new account. Be generalized, not specific, but you can go and ask for help for coding problems or triage, or I need to install this and it's not working. Go get help. Go ask people. People want to help. There are people out there trying to help. And some helpful links. Data leak check. Dhash.com is one of my favorites. That's where you can do data breach credential searches. Or have I been pwned? You enter in your email, or you can enter in a variety of different information. It sounds like a trick. It is not. Privacy.com is a good way of getting virtual credit cards set up so you can shop online without having exposure for your debit card or your regular credit card. So you can then have one layer of security between that you can then wipe out that virtual credit card once you're done with it, and they can't recharge you for hidden subscription fees. A good app for people selling on Craigslist or OfferUp or buying or selling, whatever. MySudo will give you like one click. It gives you an option for a name, email address, a new phone number that you can call and text from, that you can, it's like a burner phone, and you can get as many as you want, redo it as many times as you want. Proton VPN is one of the only VPNs I am sure that is secure. Does that mean NordVPN or ExpressVPN or these other VPNs aren't? I'm saying they were compromised at some point, and I don't trust them. This is the only one I'll use. Good news site is KrebsOnSecurity.com, run by Brian Krebs, former Washington Post. He discovered the Home Depot and Target breaches. He's a good friend and is one of the best cybersecurity journalists in the world, period. How did that get duplicated? I was a little overzealous. So we have SAC, who put on this webinar for us, and this webinar series offers a variety of different things. Assessments from vulnerability assessment, pen testing, gap analysis, third-party risk assessments, incident response, which we just call IR, SIEM tools, correlations, being able to set up alerts, custom tailored, threat hunting, digital forensics, government risk and compliance. So PCI compliance, HIPAA, FERPA, these different types of compliance requirements that a lot of organizations have to meet, especially at the government level. Cybersecurity awareness and training. Usually companies will have a mandate to do that once a year, once a quarter. I strongly encourage training employees. That is usually your weakest link, is where the errors are going to happen. And Strategic Alliance Consulting offers all of these things, and I believe quite a few other things as well. So if you have questions, give them a call. Why not? I definitely recommend it. And that is how you get a hold of them. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the webinar. I think we planned on initially a 30 minutes, but I talk a lot. And now we went to like 37. So if there are any questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Give that a minute. If you guys want to post any questions in the, okay, so anonymous attendee, what's the most common mistake you see public sector versus private sector organizations make when it comes to securing their systems? Are there similarities or differences? If you could only make one cybersecurity recommendation for organizations to invest in, what would it be? And what's an emerging cybersecurity threat that you think organizations need to be more aware of? What's the most underrated, overlooked thing you can do to secure your systems from attack? Well, that's a whole other talk, but common mistake in public sector is not enough budget or not enough resources or too far behind. If you could only make one cybersecurity recommendation for organizations to invest in, what would it be? Training. Or pen testing. What's an emerging cybersecurity threat you think organizations need to be more aware of? Yeah, the MFA hacking definitely needs to be YubiKeys for everybody. And I don't have a stake in YubiKey. What's an emerging cybersecurity threat that you think organizations need to be more aware of? Teenagers. I mean, they usually suck. Office 365, the hidden things in Office 365, like email forwarding rules or new accounts being created. Like, people don't fully utilize their Office 365 subscriptions because they don't have an expert on staff, or they don't hire one, or they don't have the resources available. So get like a vCISO, virtual CISO, which means a chief information security officer who's part-time, on call, kind of like a detective or an attorney, or, on a regular schedule, so they can make sure you're not deviating from best practices. Like, if you're flying from Tokyo to London and you don't have a GPS and you make one small course correction, but you don't check, you check like once an hour, you could get way off course before you make that next checkpoint. If you're checking real time, you can hone in on the destination. Underrated, overlooked thing you can do to secure your systems from attack: different passwords for everything. And passwords that are 15 characters or more. What is a handy site that one can use to see if they have been compromised? Yeah, breach aware or have I been pwned? Yes, breach aware is something I'm aware of. I just said it too many times in my head and now it's lost meaning. How should a user protect his or her passwords? Password manager. I use LastPass. There's OnePass, there's a ton of different ones, but I like LastPass, or if you're a company, I would recommend Thycotic, THYCOTIC or something like that. Let's see, I think that's about it. But yeah, LastPass is on Android, iPhone, Mac, Linux, Windows, Chrome, Firefox, Edge. And then it syncs between them and it suggests passwords. So you don't have to store them in the browser, which is really easy to break into. Really, really easy. Like I have a USB. Let's see where that's like toolkit of USB stuff that you can plug in. It's called a rubber ducky. I don't know why, but you plug this in and it can load a payload of a virus, a program, a script, and you plug it in and unplug it. And it's already done all its work. It's installed a keylogger, it's installed all sorts of things, and then it'll take all your browser passwords and send them over to you over email. All I needed was 30 seconds with the USB port. That's it. Hackers are much more motivated and much more clever than people give them credit for. So I think that'll be it for today. Thank you to all those who tune in. Thank you to Strategic Alliance Consulting for putting this on. Thanks for having me. Thank you for listening. See you next time.